LUANNE. I am the ERO in these elections. I thought that I would have a lot of time in August, and that's why I could be ERO. And then I became deputy leader of Brighton Hove City Council, so that was fun. But I am continuing nonetheless. So I, as Isaac has just said, we've got 4 different roles that are having their hustings today. For Liberation Group hustings, that will happen at another time during convention when there's a designated slot for those Liberation Groups only. So we are starting off for the next 16 minutes. We're going to be doing the hustings for non-portfolio candidates. We have 9 candidates for 6 roles. They are Robert Nixon, Dylan Lewis-Creser, Kelsey Trevett, Badger Hill, Jane Robb, Faye Whitfield, George Morris, Annabelle Van Dort, and Sarah Sharp. And of course, the candidate that always gets forgotten, which is reopen nominations as well. So that makes it 10. So you always have a choice to reopen nominations if you don't like any of the candidates, although I hope you do. So we are now going to hear from them. I'm going to go in the reverse order. I'm not going to give Ron a minute to speak, but I am going to give everyone else a minute to speak. So I'll go in the reverse order of the list I've just read and give Sarah 1 minute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm running to be a non-portfolio officer, but hoping to be international officer for the Young Greens. And the reason I want to do this is for a number of reasons. Firstly, I would like to strengthen the relationship with the Federation of Young European Greens and the Global Young Greens. I'd love to build on what we already have here in England and Wales. I have experience working with the European Green Party this year, and I think I can use that experience really well for the Young Greens. Secondly, I would really love to learn from the successes of the Young Greens across Europe in electing Young Greens to councils and parliament. And I think here in England and Wales, we have a lot of potential to do that. And learning from other Young Green parties would be amazing to get their advice and guidance on that. Thirdly, I would love to run workshops on international issues for us. I'm currently studying a master.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. Sorry.
I will go next to Annabelle. Annabelle? I think I saw you here. There we go. Right, I muted you.
Restart. Yeah, hi, I'm Annabelle, and I'm running to be a non-portfolio officer, hopefully specialising in the campaigns position. I'd really like to run for this position because I think we're living in a very important moment in terms of youthful political activism with Black Lives Matter, the push for a green recovery from coronavirus. And I think we as the Young Greens have a position to play in pressurising the government and also forming like a unified front against a government that doesn't really care about our future. I have experience in events organisation for charities, Survival International. I put on some events for them, and they are an Indigenous rights charity. Within that, I'd really like to do work more with the climate justice side of things, run some campaigns with that. I like to work closely with the liberation groups. As a woman of colour, I think it's very important within the Green Party that we kind of make our youth group kind of look more inclusive, and I do think that as a woman of colour it would be really nice.
That's 1 minute, sorry. The next person I've got is George. I don't know if he's here though. I couldn't see him on the list.
Yes, I'm here.
Here we go. All right, okay, you've got your minute. Off you go.
Hi, my name is George Morris, and I want to be your next Groups and Societies officer. And I'm standing because I think we need to engage a wider proportion of our membership. One part of this is expanding our training schemes and political education so we can future-proof our regions, expanding 30 under 30 would be an obvious solution, but it's important to keep in mind how resource intensive it is, so we need to think about alternatives. We also need more local groups, especially in the north. We can't have active regions without local groups, and it's up to us to pass down the right knowledge and skills to local and regional leaders. The more active people we have, the stronger our voice is, and that's why I should be your first choice for non-portfolio officer.
Thank you. That was under a minute, so that's nice. Faye.
Unmuted? All hear me? Great. Okay. Hi, I'm Faye, and I'm standing for the Young Greens Executive Committee because too many times in political situations I've been the youngest person in the room. I'm 10 years older than Greta Thunberg. I'm not actually that young. And I want to change that. The 4 pillars of my campaign are representation, accessibility, inclusion, and education for young people in politics, so that they feel that they have a voice and they can be active, and I'm no longer the youngest person in the room. Ideally, I'm going for campaigns officer, but what's great about the Young Greens is that these roles change. And I think the Young Greens could really benefit from a funding officer or a fundraising officer, so that we actually have the cash flow to really help back our initiatives.
Thank you. Next person is Jane.
Hey. Okay, so I'm Jane Robb, and I'm running to be a non-portfolio with specific focus on political education. A little bit about me: I'm a qualified teacher, and for the past 10 years or so I've been working professionally in education, and I've got a PhD looking at how people value natural resources and then how they use them. I'm 29, so if that doesn't make sense. And I think political education is absolutely essential if we want to build a membership that knows what they're passionate about, understands what their values are, and then to actually put them into action. And also to make sure that we're engaging with other people and understanding different people's values as well as our own. And with my background, I think that I'd be a really good person to lead on that political education front. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate is Badger, but again, I can't see if they are here. So shout to me if you are, and if not, I will read their statement. Okay, I will read their statement then. In my half decade in the Young Greens, I founded a local group, co-chaired a liberation group, co-chaired a region, and now I'm president of a Young Greens University Society. The experiences I've gained across the board have resulted in me having a varied perspective of what the Young Greens is doing right and what needs to be done to improve when it comes to supporting and coordinating groups and societies. In addition to this, I have over a decade's experience as an activist on a range of issues, including fracking, HS2, immigration, religious freedoms, LGBT+ rights, republicanism, nuclear disarmament, and anti-fascism, to name a few. I believe that the experiences I have had as an activist in a range of environments and issues means that I have the expertise to deliver core skills and activist training throughout the year. There is now a power vacuum on the left of British politics. Let's reach out and fill it. And going on to the next candidate then is Kelsey.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Hi, I'm Kelsey Trevett, and I am running for non-portfolio officer with an interest in equality and diversity. Just a little bit about me. I have chaired a student representative group for the last 2 years, and have been really quite forefront in that, in working to promote diverse and inclusive sort of policies. And I think as the Young Greens, we have a responsibility to make sure that everything we do is kind of founded on diversity, and that we are an inclusive movement, and that we're pushing for an inclusive future for young people and students. And the best people to lead on that, of course, are the people who experience social injustices that currently make that not a reality. So a huge part of what I've been pushing is about listening to those marginalised groups and pushing for equality, diversity and inclusion across the Young Greens. And I think as a member of 2 traditionally marginalised groups, I'm in a really strong position to lead on that, and to sort of make sure that we have re-energised liberation groups and they work really well with the EC. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And now Dylan.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
My name is Dylan Lewis-Creser, and I'm running for non-portfolio officer, mainly with a portfolio of campaign outreach. A bit about me: I'm 16 years old. So I believe I'm the youngest candidate running for election here, and I believe that brings a certain level of outsider thinking I can bring to the EC, to show that we're not too focused on our core areas and our core mid-20s Young Green, and we attract more under 18s. I'm also from a rural area in one of our, I think, our second worst region, the East Midlands. So my campaign outreach is to try and make sure that our campaigns as Young Greens are inclusive of everyone, and not just in our core cities of Brighton, London, Bristol, etc. and they're able to make the Greens a viable option across the country, including in rural areas like my home county of Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Robert.
Hello, my name is Robert. I'm standing for election with a focus on being an elections officer, and I think that I'm the best placed candidate to take on that role because of the experience that I've got in the Young Greens already. I've co-chaired the South East Young Greens for about half a year now, I think, and I've been on that committee for over a year and leading all elections work there. I've also done a lot of elections work locally in Oxford Green Party, which is my local party. I'm part of the elections committee there, and I got myself elected to the town council in my hometown of Bicester. So I think I'm well placed to do that in terms of experience for the role.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm now going to go on to some questions. We've had quite a few submitted in advance, which is great, and I don't think we'll have time for all of them. So if I ask candidates if you can speak for 30 seconds when I call you as a maximum, that would be great. And the first question that's been submitted is, being an officer on any of the Young Greens bodies isn't just about having skills and knowledge for the role. Maybe more important is being a committed officer and doing the work you say you will. Are you confident you'll be a committed officer? Do you have any past experience of a strong commitment? And I will go to George first.
I mean, obviously, I think it's really important that people are committed officers. I think experience is obviously not just what it's all about. Sorry, I'm going to stop there.
Okay, and I will go to Kelsey next.
Yeah, 100%. So I completely agree that as elected officers, we are accountable to the Young Greens, and so it's really important that you can put faith enough that we will do what we say we'll do and what we've told you that we will do. For me, I've had experience. As I said, I chaired a student representative group for my 2 years of A levels, so I was juggling 4 A levels and committing to leading a student representative group and working on campaigns, and been involved with the Young Greens for some of this year as well. So I have experience juggling commitments, but also managing my own time and making sure.
I think that's 30 seconds, but I started my timer late. So I will go to Jane next.
Okay, so I was on the London Young Greens Committee as secretary for the past year, and obviously as secretary, all you really are meant to do is like take minutes and make meetings, arrange meetings, but I got involved in pretty much everything that they did. It was something that I was really passionate about doing, and I'm more than happy and excited to lend a hand to everything and to get involved as much as possible.
Thank you. The next person I am going to is Annabelle. Annabelle, you're muted again, sorry.
Not very good at that. So yeah, I'm a very passionate person, and I very much like getting hands-on in a lot of things I commit to. Like I mentioned before, I've done events organising for charities. I did some work with a homeless choir called the Choir with No Name, and did that over the span of a year, and at school as well, just organising for my house and in different societies. But yeah.
Thank you. Robert next.
Yeah, so I think the fact that I pulled off the M1 today to join this Hustings is a very practical demonstration of my commitment to this campaign, and I'll carry that through to the role of officer on the Young Greens Executive Committee. I think I've been very committed in my role on the South East Young Greens as co-convener and previously non-portfolio officer, and also I've been a councillor for over a year now in Bicester, and I've got a 100% attendance record at my
That's 30 seconds, Robert. Thank you. And next is Faye.
So I've always been committed in everything that I've done, even before I got involved in politics, and this is probably why I got involved in politics. When I was 16, I ran for head girl at school. I didn't get head girl. I didn't even get deputy head girl because it was a popularity contest. But even though I didn't get either of those positions, I still got the girls' toilets redone and I got new benches put into the parks. So I still managed to achieve my mission even without getting elected.
Thank you. And I will go to Sarah next.
Yeah, so my main commitment probably was being the chair of Bristol Green Sock this year. I had a lot of amazing support from my committee, but still, especially during the general election, was absolutely a full-time commitment, working with the local party and working to help the local campaign. And I'd love to translate that into the Young Greens this year.
Thank you. And Dylan.
As the head of my, obviously this is my first election to a Young Greens position, but for 5 terms I was the head of my school's council, as the head of the Green Group, in which we got a majority and were able to implement change such as sustainable packaging in the restaurants, use of non-toxic cleaning equipment by the staff, and as previously mentioned, I had a 100% attendance record as leader, and we managed to get real change.
That's 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay, that's time's up on the non-portfolio hustings, but I hope you can all stick around and maybe question other candidates as well. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about the Structures and Procedures Committee. This committee has 5 roles on it. We have 3 candidates plus the ever missing reopened nominations. The candidates are Nick Humberstone, Ria Patel and Isaac Searle. Ria is not here, so I am going to start off by reading out a statement, and I am timing myself when I read these out, by the way, and then I will move on to the other candidates who are here. So, Ria's statement. Hi, I'm Ria and I'm running for position on the Structures and Procedures Committee. I joined the Green Party last year as their policies are the only ones to align with my views. To help uphold and clarify the Constitution for the Young Greens would be amazing. During the past few months, I've got further involved in the party. Currently, I'm part of the London Young Greens Committee and have been reaching out to university societies as I'm passionate about making sure young and diverse people get a voice in politics. Therefore, I'm also the External Relations Officer for Greens of Cllr, helping to connect with other organisations. Finally, I've helped with the governance of LGBTIQA+ Greens, making sure that policy is inclusive for all. This has helped me gain experience with being on committee and working with others to solve issues that arise. I would love to get more involved with democracy-related and constitution-related issues as I find policy super interesting. I'm a quick learner and I'm keen to learn as I go. Through studying research papers in my psychology degree, I've experienced in interpreting and analysing long documents in order to quickly gain a concise understanding of documents, which would be a transferable skill in helping to interpret ruling documents. And that was 58 seconds it took me to read that. That was very good. I'm going to go to Nick first.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Humberstone. I'm standing to be an SPC member. I've done the role for the past 2 years. Within that, have there been good parts? Yes. Have there been bad parts? Yes. I'm hoping to, each time I do the role, make sure that those bad parts are less bad and that I'm improving and working on them. In terms of SPC experience, I own like 120 board games or something. So I'm very much into reading rules and making sure that we follow them word by word. And I would continue to do that in the role if you elect me again. Thank you.
Thank you. And Isaac.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Isaac. I'm 16 and I'm from the West Midlands, standing to be on the Structures and Procedures Committee. As SPC co-chair this year, I've ensured that our members have as many opportunities as possible throughout the year to hold our elected representatives to account via a range of reports and at our first ever autumn accountability event in Manchester. Greater regional cooperation is really important, and I'll ensure that all regions are fully supported within our democratic structures. I've recently worked to set up an ambitious range of Liberation Group elections, and next year I'll work with our Liberation Groups to make sure that marginalised communities are represented in our structures. SPC is about making constitutional rulings, but we must also stick up for all members within our organisation, and that's what I'll do next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. So I currently only have one question for this role, so please do submit any in the chat for me. Oh, I've just had some come through, that's good. So the first question is, what are your main goals for this role if elected? And I will go to Isaac first.
Thank you. One thing I'm really keen to do next year is make sure that going forward, our structures best amplify and represent everyone within the Young Greens. So that's regions that currently don't have much of a say within our decision making, and that's liberation groups as well. I'm putting forward a couple of motions to our convention this year, which will mean that convention needs to take place around the whole country, and also that our groups are fully representative of the whole organisation and not just the typical green areas.
Thank you, and Nick.
Yeah, we have a really great opportunity as the Young Greens to try and be a model for what democracy could look like, and then try and push that towards the Green Party as a whole. And I think us doing this convention online coming up is going to be a really good example of that, and work out how we can take that forward and hopefully report back to the Green Party to make sure that the success we see is seen in the party as a whole. The other goal I very much expect we'll probably hold an emergency general meeting, which will basically be like an extra convention because we love them so much in the middle, where we'll probably look at how we can restructure the executive committee to sort out the problem of people running for a non-portfolio role and having a specific role in mind and then not being able to get elected to it because other people also want the same role, and also making sure that lib groups are represented, because it's really important to have those voices in the room to make sure the decisions we're making aren't overlooking communities.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, and I think this will probably be the last one, and then we'll move on to the next set, because I haven't had any more, which is, will you put in the regular but light work needed for this role? And I will go to Nick first.
In the past, I've struggled a bit with getting that regular work in. I've kind of worked out how I can do it a bit better, and have done from the past year, I think, compared to the first year I was doing it. But yes, I believe that I'm prepared to put in the regular and light work to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. And Isaac, I don't know if you dropped out there.
Yeah,
so
I
just
did.
in case, yeah. Will you put in the regular and light work needed for this role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my track record over this past year proves that. I've regularly been to the executive committee meetings, and I've had extra meetings with our regions to support them, as well as liberation group organisers. So it should really be more about just interpreting the Constitution when necessary. We should be fully supporting and implementing all our democratic structures and accountability processes throughout the whole year, and I'll make sure I do that again next year.
Okay, last call for questions for SPC, otherwise I will move on to the next election a little bit early. Or I'll just make one up on the spot. You know what? I'll just make one up on the spot. I've done this role before. I know what it is. What is your favourite section of the Constitution or the Standing Orders? Isaac, you go first.
I think bylaw 2 of the Constitution, because that's what makes SPC SPC.
Very good. Politician's answer there. Nick, off you go.
It's hard. There's a lot of things I think we should change about it. Sorry.
All right, let's move on. So thank you. Your candidates for SPC, as a reminder, are Ria Patel, Isaac Searle, Nick Humberstone, and reopen nominations. And we will now move on to Green students. There are 3 candidates in this election for 2 roles, but 2 of the candidates can't make it today. So again, we'll probably shorten this one actually and extend co-chair, and maybe we'll finish a bit early so I can finish making the cookies I was baking this morning. And so the candidates are LUANNE, THORNTON, Billy Wassell and Jane Baston, and of course reopen nominations. Jane and Billy can't make it today, so I'm going to start off by reading their statements. Jane says, "My name is Jane and I'm running to be co-convener of the Student Campaign Committee. I haven't been active in the Green Party for long, but since joining, I've wanted to see the Young Greens more involved with student campaigning across the country. I've been a full-time officer at the University of York, representing the interests of postgraduate students since September 2019. I know the passion with which students defend their education, and the Young Greens should be standing alongside them. I'm running for this role because I want to make sure that every student is represented and heard within the Young Greens, and that we're fighting together on the issues that affect all of us. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry I couldn't be at the hustings today." And Billy's statement, the COVID-19 pandemic has further accentuated the sheer ignorance and discontent shown towards students by almost every part of society. Students were hung out to dry by private renters, left to fend for themselves academically by their universities, and were still charged for the summer term as if a global pandemic wasn't taking place. As part of the Young Green Student Committee, I want to reconnect our party as well as society with the student population. It's high time the exploitation of students was stopped. During this pandemic, students were nurses in hospitals, students were paramedics in ambulances, students were staff in supermarkets. Despite students playing a major role in helping keep the country afloat, next to no financial, emotional or academic support was shown by government or universities. Throughout history, university students have been a major player in bringing about political change. Now it's time for us to play our part. I'm demanding that political classes take notice of students and stop neglecting us. If I were elected, I would make sure student campus campaigning was a radical pioneering process. I want to see the university campus campaigning take the lead on political movements such as the climate emergency, protection for renters and racial equality. And that was a minute, but I am not finished with their statement. So you need to read the rest on the website. I'm now going to go on to offering a minute to LUANNE.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Perfect. So I'm LUANNE. I'm running to be the student co-convener. My first 3 points I want to do is support students in setting up and maintaining the student groups within universities and colleges. Ensure that universities and colleges have a sustainability and students are aware of this, whether that's setting up a document online so people can look at that. That'd be something I'm really encouraged to do whilst I'm in, if I get the role. And then in terms of promoting campaigns on equality and diversity is something I feel really passionate about. Over the last week I've been working with NUS on delivering the Lead and Change 2020 conference to universities across the country, and it's really important, especially during the COVID pandemic, that we are listening and to our liberation groups and really delivering change for them, which is something I want to do as Green Student Co-convener.
Thank you. So the first question I have for you is, how will you continue to provide accessible ways for young people to learn and engage about politics?
In terms of accessible ways, again, being accessible has become even harder during the COVID pandemic. So first of all, we will have to be looking at online resources, but again, there's accessibility problems with that, whether that's through not being able to get them due to economic background, or whether that's due to disabilities. So I think it's really important remembering that not everyone can access digital resources, making sure that there are safe spaces for students particular to be able to access information, and that any accessibilities are put in place, whether that's social distance, gatherings, anything like that. I think that's answered the question. I did ramble and I think that didn't make sense.
That's right, I am still timing you even though it's just you. The next question is, how can you encourage more young green engagement in the North and other underrepresented areas?
So I'm from Yorkshire. I spent a year in Huddersfield, which is one of the best, I think, in terms of green populations in the North, and having a green councillor in the centre of Huddersfield, which I think was highly influenced by the students as well. So I think it's embracing best practice from around the country and replicating that in other towns as well.
Thank you. Awesome. And last question for you is, the Green Students co-conveners can co-opt a committee of 5. Do you plan to do this, and how will you use that committee?
I think it's really important. I think obviously there's a lot that needs to be done within the student sector, especially in terms of liberation movements. So in terms of a committee, I'd want a committee that would look at liberation groups, consider the challenges there, and then look for, in terms of how we're going to make our information, our campaigns accessible. So through, whether that's through communication and stuff like that, and just a fair representative and fair election process for the co-conveners to be appointed as well.
Thank you very much. I think we'll end there. So co-chair candidates, I hope you're all here, because we are going to start a bit earlier. I should have given more time to the non-portfolio, sorry. but then I just was stuck to my timings. So we have 3 candidates for 2 roles for co-chair. We have Rosie Rawle, we have Macsen Brown, and we have Lily Fitzgibbon, and we of course have the forever forgotten candidate of reopen nominations. So you can always vote for those. There are 2 positions as co-chair. At least one must be reserved for someone who does not self-define as a man. That's the same for Green students as well, I should have said. So we will go first to the candidates to give their minute speech, and I will go to Macsen first.
Cool, diolch yn fawr. My name is Macsen, I'm 18, I'm based in London, and I would like to stand for the position of co-chair of the Young Green Party, because I think we're at a point at the moment where we really need to rethink the way we are doing activism, because you're probably aware we're in the middle of a massive climate crisis, and we simply cannot wait until the next general election to make a change. And I'm really excited to hear what other candidates have been saying so far, because I really think we need to start focusing more on what change we can build now. And that means being explicitly anti-capitalist, as the Young Green Party has often been in the past. It means really taking genuine anti-racist stances. And that means more than just sort of reform. It means we need to actually generally talk about things like police abolition, like prison abolition, institutional changes that will deliver genuine social justice. And I think this needs to happen by building a broad network of activists, each with trainings and skill shares, so that people can actually build.
That's 1 minute, sorry. Rosie, you're next.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Rosie. I'm one of the current Young Greens co-chairs and excited to be restanding this summer. And I'm really proud of the work that we've been delivering over this last year, especially in relation to building up our infrastructure and our reach and engagement with our political education. But I'm even more excited about what that means we can do this year. And as Macsen has said, it's a really, really important time to be doing so at a time of global pandemic, with Boris Johnson and his cronies in charge, and crucially with Labour moving back towards the right. We have to ensure that the next stage of society is one that is radically democratic and different to the last. And I believe the Green Party and the Young Greens has a really important role to play here. So if I was elected, I have a few priorities in mind. This is around creating and growing a Green students network and increasing the power of our local, regional and liberation groups, ramping up our programme of political education, and also getting another wave of young radical Green councillors elected in local institutions, taking power back at the grassroots. And finally, rebuilding and launching our Young Green speaker network so we have a bigger platform in the main stage. I hope I've proven my dedication to this movement.
That's a minute. Thanks, Rosie. And Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily Fitzgibbon, and very similar to what we've heard, I think we all agree that the Young Greens is a very progressive movement, and there is a space to be filled in left-wing politics at the moment. And I've been heavily involved in a range of protest movements, from We Strike to Climate, to Cllr, to clean air campaigns, to anti-airport expansion. And I think the people that we're seeing in these protest movements are far too often apolitical or self-described as, oh, I don't vote, I don't support a party. And I think we need to be taking that energy and those ideas of these movements and making this an accessible space for people who feel very disillusioned from the idea of the mainstream party. And that would sort of be my aim for the Young Greens, is to reconcile those two groups that they have the exact same ideas. We all want the same thing.
Thank you. Okay, I've got quite a few questions submitted here for co-chair candidates. So I will start with those. And then if you do have any questions, you can just private message me them at any time, and I will, if I get time to come to them, I will. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I will put this in the chat as well, is how would you describe the role and purpose of the Young Greens, both in relation to the Green Party and in relation to wider politics? And I will go back to Lily first.
Particularly in relation to the Green Party, I think it's about making youth voices heard. I know, sorry, got a sore throat. I know in my local party, the average age was around 60 at so many of the meetings I was going to, and I often felt quite, not uncomfortable, but out of place in those spaces. And I think Young Greens need to be more and more visible in councils, in local meetings, when in all of these spaces that the Green Party is already occupying. What was the second half of the question? In wider politics, yeah, I think, as I said before, I think in wider politics, the Young Green space is definitely a left-wing space. As was said about the Labour Party becoming more right-wing, I think we need to firmly occupy that space more than before.
Thank you. Rosie.
Yeah, so I think that we have a really important role to play, and we have always played a really important role to play in the politics of the Green Party, not only just in the way that we might be delivering and shaping the internal policies, but in our campaigning and our movement and holding our leaders to account. And one of the key things I think we've been doing is putting a really strong line on ensuring that environmental and social justice are intrinsically linked. That is something that's come through for the force of the Young Greens, and we need to be really powerful in including that, as well as liberation politics. In a wider politics, I think we need to be building collaborative work within wider movements, being a really strong force behind things like the school strike movement, which these guys will know so much more about than I will. I'm delighted to see you standing, but yeah, it's about building powerful movements and building power in our communities, in our schools, in our universities, in our communities, and by delivering electing young green councillors to local government, which has an enormous amount of power, even despite all the cuts, as you know, Hannah.
Thank you. Finally, Macsen.
So I think within the party, we've got a role of holding the wider Green Party to account. So in cases like Jonathan Bartley's Islamophobia, sort of rampant transphobia and sort of overpopulation narratives in the party, the Young Greens has an excellent record of standing up to those and making it absolutely clear that these kind of outdated, racist, bigoted attitudes are completely unacceptable. And as young Green co-chair, I would do my best to carry that on and absolutely hold the wider Green Party to account, as well as pushing for sort of radical social and environmental justice policy. In terms of wider politics, I think that the Young Greens have a role to play in bringing people in to a movement that many people are sort of ambivalent or kind of have lots of stereotypes about, that being the climate justice movement. And through our network, we're able to deliver sort of trainings and give people skills and the confidence they need to then go out and start making changes themselves. So that's why I think our role could be in wider politics.
Thank you. I had the next question ready to put in the box, and then someone submitted basically the same question but worded better, so I'm now going to read out the one that's just been submitted worded better. Young Greens co-chairs have an active role within the National Party, sitting on GPEX and Polcom, as well as representing young people more generally. Are you confident in your ability to stand up for the Young Greens on these bodies and in the wider party more generally? And I will go to Rosie first.
Yeah, so in general, I would say that I've been a rather loud voice on GPEX for the last 2 years, maybe not one that is always listened to, but certainly persistent. And I've been calling the Green Party to account on a number of things. I take the role really seriously in ensuring that, we are scrutinising budgets, making sure that our party is operating in the way that is living to our best values. But also, more recently, ensuring that political projects that come out of the party don't clash with our politics. So comms projects that don't clash with our politics. So for example, the more recent chocolate meditation stuff, all these strange kind of hippie ideas of how change should happen. I've been really holding them to account on ensuring that we're not focusing on individualistic change and more system change if we're going to be talking about power. So that's one thing I've been really hammering home, and more widely some of the things that Macsen mentioned, there are other ways to hold the party to account as well through building power and movement. So delivering an online letter, an open letter of 200 members was something that I was
That's your minute, Rosie. Macsen?
Yeah, I can talk for hours and hours on end, and people, as there's this idea of committees being places where middle-aged white men will keep droning on until sort of the radical people get tired. That will not happen with me. I'm incredibly pompous, and I will use this to the best of my ability to make sure that young voices are held up to within those committee spaces, but also, of course, as Rosie said, even when we do our best, sometimes these people just don't listen. So I think it's really important that we make use of our press contacts. I've got plenty of experience of writing articles and things like that, making speeches, and when necessary, I believe that I'll be able to make cases directly to the public as to why things that sort of the wider Green Party does are unacceptable. Which, let's be honest, they probably will do.
Thank you. And Lily.
Yeah, I've never really been one to bite my tongue when I'm not happy, even when that's a disadvantage. And I have never had an issue with criticising or standing up to even organisations I support and feel strongly about, whether this has been issues within the youth strike movement or my personally rather adversarial relationship with my local mayor. There have been certainly times in my life where I have not been afraid to say what I and people I'm from my groups that I represent think.
Thank you. I think I'll probably do a couple more questions. I've got a few more. So the next question is, which campaign groups, social movement organisations and other groups are you most excited to work with as a member of the Young Greens Executive Committee? And I'll go to Macsen first.
I guess all of them is probably cheating. So I mean, obviously I've got I mean, I haven't said this, but so I'm active in youth strike movements. But I think that's in sort of an interesting place at the moment, and how that goes forward will be really good. Of course, kind of resurgence of Black Lives Matter is really important, as I think often to me the Green Party has been very, very bad at doing, is joining that dot. And it's not even because it's making that case that environmental justice is inseparable from racial justice, because obviously climate crisis was built on a racist system. So it's very much those radical internationalist movements. 26 Coalition, which is the organized which is involving radical grassroots groups from around the world in making sure that international around just in the southern half.
Okay, that's your minute. We are losing you a bit, I think, unless it's just my Wi-Fi. It's not just my Wi-Fi, or it is. Oh, I don't know. Do you know what? Type it, Rosie, because I can see. I can't work out what you're saying. I'm going to Lily next. Sorry.
I mean, obviously there's social justice groups and there's also the classic environmental Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about is I really feel the Build Back Better campaign is most important to me at this moment, because we've spent all this time talking about a just transition. We've been fighting for that for years, but now we actually have a moment where we could have a green or a just recovery instead. And I think that we all need to be focusing on that in this rather unprecedented moment.
Thank you. And Rosie.
Yeah, great question. One of the things that came out of our political education work, our political programme, is we started asking the speakers to stay on a little bit afterwards, so we could actually say, that was great, now what can we do? And I think that the political programme I'm really excited about expanding to think about how we can start building more and more connections with these people, because we've now got really exciting relationships with loads of fascinating speakers and organisations, so it's how we take that to the next level. In terms of some particulars, I'm really excited about maybe working with People and Planet a lot more this year, because one of the motions that I've put forward to convention, which I really hope you will vote for, I'm not sure I can say that, but is on a new campaign perhaps that we can take into universities to drop corporate financing of our universities. And that seems to be very similar to a campaign that People and Planet have just voted through at the national conference, which I see as a really exciting opportunity for us to build power. All these amazing school strikers, I know that Macsen and Lily, you guys can deliver this work, but I'm really excited about all those people coming through to university and thinking, what next? So yeah, that's one thing I see is quite exciting.
That's your minute. And next question, I think probably the last one, although we are running a bit early, is what does success look like for the Young Greens in the next year? And I'm going to go straight back to Rosie.
Oh, okay, we're going to double our number of Young Green councillors again. We're going to build a powerful movement of student groups, of local groups, of liberation groups that have been dead in the last year, mostly, apart from a couple of excellent ones. And we're going to be able to build a force that, completely and utterly at this stage fights furiously for the party to remain anti-capitalist, anti-racist, as Max has said, progressive, and ensure that, we really start to shift the debate. That's where I think we're going to be. A powerful movement in doing so.
Thank you. Macsen, you're next.
I'd say success for the Young Greens in the next year would be sort of creating / reviving local groups across England and country, and liberation groups, so that they're able to work with local communities and establish these hubs and these networks across the country, so that the work gets done on the local scale, and we see all these beautiful, powerful, exciting local campaigns that happen to start building radical sort of systemic change from the ground up. We get that process started here, and that is what I think success would look like for us, because then it would carry on for decades to come.
Thank you. And Lily?
I was also going to say councillors. I think young councillors such a priority for me. But I would say that success would look like a time where we are no longer a radical wing of the party, where the older Greens, I don't know if we can call them old Greens, are also actively fighting for social justice alongside their environmental justice, which so many of them already are, but there does feel like there's a divide in this movement, and I don't want there to be.
Thank you. I have had 2 more questions that are very short submitted, and they're fun, so we're going to finish on those. I will do them separately. So question 1 is, why are you a Green? And I'll go back to Lily first.
I am a Green because every other movement I've ever been a part of, even environmental movements, there's always been something that makes me go, oh, that's not quite me, that's not what I agree with. I might agree with most of it, but the Greens has always been the safest space for me in terms of representing what I believe.
Thank you. Macsen?
I thought Jeremy Corbyn was a bit right-wing.
That was a very quick answer. Okay, Rosie?
Mine is just that I've never had to compromise in the Green Party on my beliefs on anything.
Great. Okay, last question. The most controversial question, I think, of any of the GPEX hustings that have happened, and has spurred now a Twitter World Cup. So hopefully you have, in that context, been thinking about this question over the last few weeks very extensively. And our final question today is, what's your favourite biscuit? Rosie first.
Party rings every time. There are Green Party rings. I don't know. It could work, but they're great.
Macsen?
Chocolate Bourbons.
And Lily?
Custard cream, because they're so cheap, and I think that's the only thing I ate in year 9 when we go down the shop.
Great. Just muted myself, didn't I? Classic. Thank you everyone so much for your time today. I think that's the end of our hustings. Hopefully you've got a great idea now of who you're going to vote for. Voting will open very shortly. You will receive an email. Check your spam, because it may end up in your spam as well. We've just got a few. Ooh, someone was unmuted there. We've got just a few more things to check out before we send it out to you, I think. There will be another hustings as well. Traditionally, there's an in-person hustings at convention, and that's written into the standing orders. We're not having convention in person, but we are still having that second hustings. So if you feel like you didn't have enough chance to get to know the candidates, then you can always ask them then. And of course, this hustings was recorded. There are still some positions that you can put yourself forward for as well. So we do have nominations reopened for Treasurer on the Young Greens exec, and also 2 positions for SBC. And I think there will also be some positions for Lib groups reopening as well. We're just working on the finer details of that. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today, and good luck to those of you who are standing.